Pour myself a very
space.
important coffee.
Okay, we're going to put brandy in that.
Yeah, I think some agents might be putting brandy in their coffees after they've heard this. Um, there we go. I had a fresh coffee just especially for it. So yeah, okay, I'm going to kick off now. I'd like to welcome John Durrant to this podcast, to this interview, to this conversation. And very briefly, the background on how I came into contact with John, who I've never met before this very moment, in fact. On LinkedIn a couple of days ago, I made a comment about the coming market conditions, which is what we're here to discuss. And John made one of the most insightful comments on my post, and I thought that it would be worth sharing John's perspective from the point of view of a former estate agent who's been through bad markets before with current agents. And if I may, John, I'll just read. So you were the founding partner of Waterfall, Durrant and Barclay, which was founded in 1992. Pretty tough times, as I remember. And that was a leading working in West Byfleet estate agency, which won several national awards. Obviously, that wasn't the start of your career in agency. If it was you were founding your own business, I assume you were in agency before that, were you?
Yeah, so I started an estate agency in the late 60s.
Okay.
And so was there in 1973 when we saw um, a really crazy market. I was working for Man & Co at the time, and we went from 400 listings down to six in a very short space of time, and that resulted. I would be sent out to photograph a house, and by the time I get back to the office, it'd be under offer because somebody would have spotted me, and they would phone around all the estate agents, and the property would be virtually sold by the time I got back 15 or so miles. I was working in Basingstoke at the time, and
So
it was,
forgive me,
a very big area.
forgive me for interrupting. So you had 400 listings and it went down to six because everything came off the market, or because everything sold, or what was the reason for the sudden drop in stock?
Well, we had huge inflation at the time because we had a gentleman called John Barber as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and basically made the conditions so that the economy was booming. But then we had the Yom Kippur War and various other financial scandals that happened at the time, and I think OPEC restricted fuel, and that was basically the end of the boom time. So that boom time was quickly followed by bust when we went to 600 houses then to sell, all of which really were overpriced because nobody would really believe that the value of their property had fallen below what they would have been able to have achieved if they had put it on the market sooner.
So
What
sorry,
also
can I just
happened
make sure
was
I'm clear following you here? So then you suddenly had a lot of stock again, none of which was selling because of the financial conditions.
well, it's a bit like the property market. I think is a bit like an oil tanker. It takes a long time to respond to financial conditions, and that works both ways. So slowing down an oil tanker and getting one started, getting up to speed again, is something that can fool us into thinking that everything is remaining as it is, when in fact the trend is down. I think Rightmove just a couple of days ago said that they're beginning to detect that house prices are on the way down. And I don't know, I really don't know, being completely out of touch with the state agency these days in terms of not sitting in an office and seeing how punters and vendors are responding. I'm not really seeing from the coalface, but just from the perspective of somebody who's seen boom and bust so often over the years, I started to become concerned about this property market back in October last year, and I think I actually put up a couple of posts which were, um, you know, challenged by a couple of estate agents, and of course they were right in so far as there was still a shortage of supply, um, and but it struck me that what Rishi Sunak had done was tantamount to creating a kind of situation that created a vacuum of properties coming onto the market after you sort of messed around with the stamp duty thing. So you have people, people move. People want to move all the time. They're getting divorced, they're having babies, they're getting promotions, etc. And what he did, what COVID did, in fairness, was to slow things down. If it waited, I'm pretty sure that logjam would have released and it would have happened naturally. But in fact, what he did was to create a vacuum by bringing people forward, 6 months from where they naturally would have been. And because that happened, that created like a self-sustaining vacuum, because people who are looking for houses to buy themselves and wanting to move are thinking themselves two things. They're thinking, first of all, well, if I wait, then the price will go up, and anyway, I can't find anything to buy, and that becomes a self-fulfilling thing. I started to worry about this back in October, because there is a limit to how far a market can go. You need first-time buyers for a healthy property market, and there is a limit to how far they can stretch. And since the war in Ukraine and inflation, we've got a situation where even £400 a month effectively takes out. I checked just now actually with a mate who's a mortgage broker. Effectively takes out £80,000 in purchasing power
Wow.
out of the budget. And if you're on do a 35-year mortgage, then you're talking about just under £100,000. So if you take that money out of the household budget, then you're in a situation that potentially people are going to want to borrow less. And in fact, I think that mortgage lenders will, at the moment, the volumes of mortgage lending are down. So just how far they'll go with this, I don't know. But I do cast my mind back over the years to when mortgage lenders effectively dictated the market. There was a time when Leeds Building Society would take 9 months to make a mortgage offer, for instance. You've got demand and you've got effective demand. The demand is made effective by the availability of money and by the willingness of people to spend it. You can only afford, if you can buy 3 loaves of bread one week, but then the price goes up 3 times, and you press down to 1 loaf of bread. So lenders will, I think, be becoming quite cautious about their lending policy, coming in the not too distant future. What we don't know is how long this inflation is going to persist, and a lot of that, I think, would be depending on who actually gets into number 10. I think we've got the Rishi scenario that actually seems to me to be putting pain on pain. He's going to be controlling or trying to control inflation by putting up tax rates. But to my mind, that's a little bit weird, because most of the inflation that's happening at the moment is imported inflation. 80% of it's imported. Stuff that's really out of anybody's control. So I'm not really sure that that's going to help. Then you've got the Liz Truss expansionist policies that she wants, to improve investment in the country. I think that probably will help to balance things out, actually, because there are going to be an awful lot of people in pain if this inflation level carries on like it is. But
which it's forecast to do.
I just don't know that adding pain on pain is the way to combat it. I think it's really more about productivity.
Okay, so what I'd like to ask you, because the audience for this video is going to be estate agents, and a lot of them, especially the new ones, won't have any experience other than there's a constant supply of buyers. Sorry, that's wrong. Mix my words up. There's a constant demand from buyers, and there's a varying supply of houses. But you put those two together effectively enough, and you can make a living. Okay, that's in its most crude form. It's been a buyer's market for at least 10, 12 years. And I mean, my personal view is that there is a higher chance than there has been probably since 1973 of quite a severe house price correction, which, as you know, leads to quite a long vacuum of no transactions for a while as the supply and the demand meet up, because there's always that gap, isn't there? The buyers fall away and the properties take a long time to reduce in price, and you've got no transactions at that time, and there's this painful period of adjustment. My earliest memory of that is the early 90s. And so many agents, at the moment, agents are gouging each other's eyes out just to get to talk to a vendor that might be an instruction. And they're frankly ignoring the buyers. Buyers are being overlooked and not responded to unless you crawl in their office with money in the air. They don't take you seriously. And I think you probably remember times when it's the completely opposite way round. Properties are 10 a penny and proceedable buyers are as rare as rocking horse poo.
Yeah, that's right. When that happens, you have to try your very best to attract the best buyers. And the best way to attract the best buyers really is by having the best properties to sell. If those properties are on the market at the right price, then there was throughout, or has been throughout all the bad times, or all the difficult, challenging times, I should say. There have always been buyers and sellers, but it's a question of attracting the right buyers and the right sellers. Going back to the 70s, we reached up to 600 instructions in a very short space of time. I think it was about 6 or 7 months. And we reached the point where we were actually told by our bosses to disinstruct ourselves from a good number of those. So you can imagine that we would spend all that money taking these houses onto the market, and then suddenly you were
disinstructing, and
unless you drop your price, we're not going to be your agents any longer.
Right.
They were very difficult conversations to have.
Wow.
So it's happened before. It can certainly happen again. I think that this market has the potential for that. So therefore, I think what agents need to do is to be very cautious and keep a very, very sharp eye on what the newspapers are saying, because again, when the newspapers start talking about this, with respect to you, when there are blogs like this talking about it, then it becomes kind of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Because then that creates nervousness and anticipation that something bad is going to happen, and before you know where you are, you have lots of people who are anxious about buying, and therefore sit back a bit and wait and see what's going to happen, and then other people who rush to get the properties on the market. I don't think we've reached that tipping point just yet,
no.
But I don't think it's far away. And if I were an estate agent now, I'd be talking very gently to people, particularly people of older years, those who are probably on fixed income because they're on pensions. There might be large pensions, but for whom £400 or £500 a month out of their household pensions income would make a big difference. And a lot of those people are going to be in bigger houses. I've been looking at getting those onto the market as soon as possible, because it might well be that in a few months' time you'd be talking about the prices dropping. If prices drop, say, by 10%, then 10% of a £1 million house is going to be a greater fall than 10% of a £500,000 house. So that makes a lot of sense to be talking gently to people now about getting the houses on. Again, that will obviously be increasing supply, not necessarily good for the market, which is why I was talking about it back in October last year. We should really be trying to manage the process and getting people to understand what the likelihood is of prices falling. So I'd be very careful when I was talking to vendors about what might be achievable if they're a bit lucky, but then keeping an eye on the market and being prepared to take a lower figure. So the spread, if you like, between what they are likely to get and what they could get might be much larger than usual.
And what would you say to any existing clients on your books who aren't getting offers? that are on the market
Um,
now and not selling?
well, I had this conversation many times. I'd be saying, look, if you wait another 3 months, then you could be down another 10%. So you have to do something today about it. Otherwise, you might not actually achieve a sale at anything like the kind of money that you want.
And okay, let's just
So
say that's a client that's been on your books for 3 months or so, and they turn round to you, as they might do in normal market times, and say, "Oh, that's typical. So you overvalued it, didn't you?" How would you advise an agent to say that's a fair challenge, but actually no, the conditions have changed? Is that? I mean, how would you handle that?
well, I think I probably would. I might I might take in a couple of newspaper articles with me. There are a couple in the Telegraph
Right.
and others that are saying, watch out for what price is going to be doing. And I would be, as I said, I did introduce a very wide spread. I would say, look, at the moment, the market hasn't tipped, but it's getting there. If we don't sell it before it does tip, then it could get nasty. And therefore, I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to say to you that you're going to get this price. But so I'm going to give you a price that I think you should be able to achieve within 3 months. But don't rely on that, because we don't know where the market is going. I mean, if I were a stockbroker, I might be saying something similar. It's just like a commodity that the prices go up and down. There's a reason that you have this phrase boom and bust, and I think this is about to be understood by a lot of people.
That's a very good way of putting it. So the house price or the housing market oil tanker is about to hit an iceberg, perhaps.
I think that's the case. Although, as I say, the financial advisor, he's a good mate. I spoke to him earlier about what 400,000 buy. He said, well, mortgage lending is down at the moment. And that's true. That could be because there's still a shortage of properties. I think we have seen a decline over the last few decades in new homes being built. So it kind of does balance out. If you're not building enough new homes, then that can get a situation. The other side of the story is that we're seeing quite a lot of Hong Kongers come into the country. We don't really know what effect that will have. But I think that the issue really is more about what will happen to the first-time buyer market and this affordability business of, if you take out £400 from my household budget, do they even know that they're going to have £400 taken out of their household budget? That heating is going to be that much more expensive? Probably not at the moment, not unless they actually sit down and with somebody, parents going through the same pain. Food costs. A lot of those people will be in rented accommodation already, so they will understand that. But I do think that there will be a lot of people who will be probably staying put with their parents and waiting out and seeing what's going to happen. And without a first-time buyer market, you've got a very difficult market unless you've got people coming in from abroad who are able to buy without reference to a sale.
And for the benefit of millennial agents, right, guys in their 30s now who've simply never experienced in their adult life any form of proper recession, could you paint a picture of what it's like for an estate agent when you've got that 600, what the day-to-day life is like? I mean, how differently it contrasts from this buyer's market we've had for the last 10, 12 years. Because I mean, my memory in the 90s is of literally estate agents sitting behind their desks waiting for the phone to ring, property sitting in the window, and just very, very little happening, and wondering how they're going to keep their doors open.
It's a time of opportunity. It's 1992 was when we started Waterfall, Durrant and Barclay, which is what you recognised at the outset, and it was a time that we were able to do that because we wanted to open in commercial way premises in good premises. We wouldn't have had the covenant to be able to do that if the market wasn't so poor for commercial property. So it was a time of opportunity that enabled us to get started. We did see interest rates at 15%. We're a long way off that currently. The market, it took us probably a year to get established and to start selling properties on a regular basis. Unfortunately, we had a bit of money behind us. Yeah, it's just going to be a totally different vibe. As I said, the conversations you're having are more about disinstructing yourselves rather than trying to encourage people to instruct you. So, you have to kind of switch your mentality over. As an estate agent, you want to do most estate agents want to do their best for the client. And so the nature of estate agents is to try and encourage or try and get the best price possible. But so the danger there is that that you end up overvaluing property, perhaps unintentionally, and not taking account of the fact that that there might not be the number of buyers around at a later stage. This period that's coming up is about extreme caution, and not over-egging it, not thinking to yourself that prices are going to go up another 12% this year, because they probably aren't. So if anything, you just start with, if you can't get your head around it, just start by keeping the price where it absolutely should be, and not allowing for house price inflation. Just keep it where that you're going to be okay for the moment, but then also warn the client that things could well be difficult in a month or two's time if you don't succeed in finding somebody right away.
And how would you change your approach on fees in a tougher market?
Probably, maybe one of the tools that you have available would be to have menu pricing. Something that the job really of an estate agent at this point really is to try and attract the best properties. And the best properties aren't necessarily those that have got £60,000 kitchens, but the ones where the vendors are listening to you about listening to your advice. In other words, ones with more than one brain cell, and they can actually appreciate that what you're saying is truth and it's not you trying to undersell their property. So I would be inclined to do something like rack. I can't remember the term for it, but pricing where if you can achieve the top price, then you'll get 2% of the
sliding scale.
A sliding scale, that's right. But if you only achieve the bottom end, then you'll get the bottom part of it. And I'd also be looking at sole agency contracts. And at Waterfalls, we only ever did a running 2-week agency contract, which I think is the fairest way of doing it for the client. And I've been making a big thing about that. The agents who have to, who tell you to ask a very high price for the property, and who also want you to sign a 6-month sole agency, I tell them to go and take a running jump.
Yep.
Because what they're doing, it happened to my auntie. She didn't ask my advice, she asked her.
They never do they? It's so strange.
Yeah, and they said they sell this house in Aldershot some years ago, £250,000, £275,000. It was above the stamp duty threshold. They ended up selling it for £245,000 months later, and of course there was nothing anybody could do about it because she had a long-term sole agency contract, and that's wicked.
Yeah.
Which is I've always operated on a 2 rolling sole agency, and I think that is the vendors. The estate agent must have confidence in the advice they're giving you. Otherwise, and particularly, if they're saying that it's going to be easy to sell, then let them prove it. That it's going to be easy to sell. So 2 weeks rolling agency contract seems to be definitely the way I would insist on that if I was selling this property.
I absolutely agree with you. As someone that represents movers first and foremost, and then great agents, I couldn't agree with you more on that front. I think that pretty much wraps up the conversation as far as advice for agents. But are there any other thoughts you want to add to any agent that's just worried about the current? Like, how should they prepare their business? I mean, my view is that the worst time is probably going to be Q1 next year for estate agencies' businesses, for their pipelines. You know, they might get to the deals tied up before Christmas, but they're going to have, if things get worse, if the economy gets worse in the winter, the fall throughs, especially if mortgages are being downvalued, lending is getting harder and harder, affordability is getting worse. The risk of pipelines collapsing is going to be really bad in Q1. And I just wonder if you've got any pearls of wisdom for agents who want to, if you like, batten down the hatches and be ready when they've got 5 or 6 months notice to do that.
Yeah, it's about getting the right instructions, and they mustn't forget that they're in the property marketing and sales business, and not just in property sales. So it's not all about getting instructions. I think if we see a trending up of instructions levels, then they need to attract the right properties, and not the worst ones. So make a really good. It's about professionalism. That's really what it boils down to. Professionalism, heart, belief in yourself, and knowing exactly what is happening with the market at any time. So any kind of data, any kind of newspaper reports that are coming out, I'd be reading that, swallowing it, and I'd be churning that back out to the vendors so that they understood the situation as well.
And the presentation of the property, of course.
And the presentation of the property. We have a leaflet. As you know, I was MD of a company called Doctor, dctr.co.uk. There I've got my.
I'll put a link to that underneath the video.
Oh, good, thank you. I've got a leaflet that we can make available to anybody with advice and to vendors about how to present their properties to the market, and I think that is essential. You know, in America, realtors will make you find it inside of your wardrobes.
Yes.
They won't let you get away with,
and you're right. And I think when there are more properties than there are proceedable buyers, the buyers have got real choice. And therefore, it really does matter how well you present your property, both in real life and also in the photographs. I mean, I failed to mention this at the start, but you founded this company, Doctor DCTR, which does image photography improvement and the manipulation. And I actually started in this industry by selling professional photographs and floor plans to the likes of Savills and Knight Frank in London, and so I completely understand. And of course, I can remember from that when you really did launch a property with stunning photography, they'd get buyers competing over it really quickly, and a lot of agents who saw it as an unnecessary expense missed out when they did their. So yeah, I think you're right. A lot of agents are going to need to pay far more attention to the quality of their marketing, because the properties are going to be competing with each other for a smaller number of buyers, I think, for a while. Yeah.
The job will be to make the house stand out in that beauty parade that we call portraits. If the houses above and below yours aren't comparable to your houses, then people are going to make a tread a path to your door. And the vendors of the bigger or the better houses, they're also going to be coming to you as well. And particularly the very nice houses, they're only about, I reckon, 20% of people who are visually sophisticated enough to know the difference between good photography and bad photography. But I do know that I've got plenty of examples of houses that were badly marketed and really photographed, and they sold within days of coming back onto the market.
Right.
I've done it myself. I've gone out and photographed houses that other agents haven't been able to sell, and effectively those agents have wasted their money. Because they might as well have taken that money and stuck it on an outsider at William Hills.
Exactly.
And then there might have sort of better chance of actually getting a result, because if you've got bad photos of houses and a good one, and if that tells a story about the house and gets people along to look at it, then you've got a much better chance of selling it. And as I said, you've got a much better chance of attracting the right house. The right house will help you to attract the right buyers.
John, thank you very much. I think that's some absolute gold dust there for some agents. So unless there's anything else you want to add, I think I'll wrap up that wrap up that conversation?
No, I just want to thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I just
that an old man gets a chance to.
I love the ability to share wisdom from someone who's walked the walk with people who are eager to soak up that wisdom, and those are the people who can be watching this video. So thank you very much, John, and all the best.
Yeah, lovely talking to you. Thank you very much. Cheers. The best. Bye.